It's Tuesday, the 22nd of August, 2023. Welcome to the Fast Five by Fear and Greed Business News, where we give you the top 5 business stories you need to know in just 5 minutes. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, 5 stories in 5 minutes. Let's get into it. Story number 1 is a big one. Federal Treasurer Jim Chalmers says Australia's economic growth rate will slow over coming decades, and it's really thanks to an ageing population.
It's part of the intergenerational report due for release on Thursday. The report will say that Australia's economy will be 2.5 times larger in 40 years' time. Now, that suggests economic growth will be slower in coming decades, averaging around 2.2% rather than the 3% plus rate of the past 4 decades. The key reason? An ageing population. Chalmers yesterday said governments need to get policy settings right to ensure Australia is a major beneficiary rather than a victim of the shifts that are underway in coming decades. He said the intergenerational report will consider globalisation to fragmentation, hydrocarbons to renewables, IT to AI, and what it all means for younger and older Australians, our industrial base and particularly the care economy. He also released yesterday the first tranche of the government's draft petroleum resource rent tax legislation. Chalmers said the government had taken a responsible, methodical approach to tax reform to fund priorities such as strengthening Medicare and bulk billing. He also conceded yesterday that the government needs to do much better on lifting productivity, Michael.
Also yesterday, Sean, the business community presented its blueprint for the future economy.
That's right. The Business Council of Australia is urging the Albanese government to concentrate funding on 10 to 15 precincts of significance, things like quantum technologies, hydrogen, semiconductors, vaccines, green energy, defence manufacturing, that type of stuff. The BCA says lifting economic growth from the current 2.3% a year takes more than industry policy, though. It needs a full suite of reforms across the economy, including tax, industrial relations, skills and fiscal policy.
Story number 2, Sean, AGL Energy has done a deal with the Victorian government to keep the Loy Yang A coal-fired power station running until 2035, even though, Sean, its 10% shareholder, software billionaire Mike Cannon-Brookes, wants to shut the generator much earlier than that.
Now, large coal-fired power plants still provide most of Victoria's energy, and the deal puts greater certainty around generation and when fossil fuel plants will ultimately close. The Victorian Energy Minister said the binding deal provides 12 years' notice of the closure, and that, of course, gives certainty over future generation levels and the economics around new renewable energy entering the market. Also yesterday, Energy Australia said it would shift its big coal-fired generator near Lithgow in New South Wales into a backup role and cease running it as a base load plant well ahead of its 2040 closure date. It's part of a $5 billion climate action plan announced by Energy Australia. That company intends to be net zero for Scope 1 and 2 emissions by 2050.
Story number 3, QANTAS is facing a class action lawsuit alleging that it violated consumer laws when it failed to refund customers for flights that were cancelled because of the pandemic.
The class action alleges that Qantas engaged in misleading or deceptive conduct, focusing on the manner in which Qantas communicated with its customers in early 2020 about their options in respect of flights that could not proceed due to COVID-19. According to the Financial Review, the action alleges that Qantas has been unjustly enriched by holding a very significant quantum of customer funds that it ought to have refunded. The airline has disclosed it's sitting on about $400 million of COVID credits that ultimately belong to customers in Australia.
Sean, story number 4, in the middle of a cost of living crisis. This is probably not what you want to hear, but it looks like insurance premiums are set to rise, with IAG, which owns brands NRMA and CGU, hinting at price increases.
After some pretty tough years for insurance companies, things are certainly on the up for the shareholders at least. IAG's profit for the 12 months to the end of June hit $832 million. Previous year it was $347 million. Few things going on there. Investment markets were much stronger. Remember, insurance companies take premiums and invest the money and then pay out as necessary. Also, last year was relatively benign weather-wise, and that means insurers didn't have to pay out as much. Also, they've been able to push through premium increases. IAG said those increases are likely to continue. Just before we leave this one, health insurer NIB also announced a jump in underlying profit yesterday, and its boss said, yep, premiums will rise in the health sector as well.
Story number 5, Sean, a complete change of pace for this one, really. A large ice chunk fell from the sky and hit a house in Massachusetts in the US, apparently after it fell off the body of an aircraft overhead.
Yes, no one was injured, but it made a mighty hole in the roof of a house. It seems the 6 to 9 kilo ice chunk came off a plane travelling to Boston Airport, according to Bloomberg. A couple heard a very loud bang, ran upstairs to see if their 2 children were okay. They were. And then noticed debris falling from an upper roof onto a lower roof. Turned out to be ice chunks. The Federal Aviation Authority is investigating.
Well, there we go. The top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Tuesday, the 22nd of August, 2023. Remember to hit follow on the podcast. And if 5 minutes isn't enough, you can find our longer daily show called Fear and Greed Business News, wherever you listen to podcasts. And that comes with a bunch of interviews as well. Today's interview is all about investing in China. It's a really interesting conversation. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed. Have a great day.